Today we're going to be looking at Sega Cards for the Master System, the history and all 10 PAL released cards that I have in my collection. So this is a Sega card, also known as a My Card in Japan, and to use these you need to have an original Master System with a card slot, and the card slots in like that, power on, you're good. Interestingly, before the Master System cards, you also had cards on the SG-1000. Here's an example. This one's Pitfall, and that is a Sega My Card right there. And to use these, you had to use a card catcher, which you slotted in there, and then you put into your cartridge slot. The whole reason for these cards were they were cheaper to produce. They were limited, though. They only stored 32 kilobytes of data, whereas a card could store 512 kilobytes of data. So I believe the plan was to have the larger, more expensive, bigger games on carts, and then the cheaper games would be on these cards, but they weren't very popular with consumers. They were eventually phased out in 1989. Apparently, they were also a health risk because kids tried to eat them. So I guess they should have done what the Nintendo Switch does with its cards and make them taste like arse. But yeah, eventually phased out in 1989. And the hardware, well, the Master System 1 has the card slot. When they revised it with the Master System 2, amongst other things, the card slot was completely removed. Didn't exist anymore. That said, when they released the Master System converter for the Mega Drive, it had the card slot and a cart slot. But when this was revised, they removed it again. So this was the last way to play them. It was compatible with most of the card games, but I know one which doesn't work with this. Now, when these cards were dropped by Sega, discontinued by Sega, they were, at least in Europe, mostly re-released on cartridge, with the exception of Great Soccer. So this one never got a cartridge release, but all the others did, and Hang On went to be a built-in title on some Master Systems as well. But yeah, I have all 10 in my collection. Let's have a quick look at them all. So first we'll start with Great Soccer. This is the German version of Great Soccer. We didn't have a UK release of this one, but it was released in, I believe, Germany, Italy, and Australia. Just a basic soccer game, red versus blue, 5 players and a goalie, developed by Sega. This one's a bit more fun. This is Bank Panic, and you're in a bank, you're the sheriff, and there's 12 doors, and you've got to rotate between them, shooting the robbers and not shooting the innocents who are depositing their money. And it works pretty well. You press down to do the left door, and then the 2 buttons to do the middle and right door. It's pretty fun, this one. I quite like Bank Panic. Next we have F-16 Fighter, which is a flight simulator and probably my least favourite of all the card games. This is the only game that the Master System converter for the Mega Drive doesn't support because it relies on some backwards compatible SG-1000 graphics modes that the Mega Drive no longer supports, but it does work in the original Master System. Next, a platformer. This one's Ghost House, and this is based on an earlier arcade game called Monster Bash. And in this, you go around the mansion and you're punching bats and creatures and looking for keys and trying to fight Dracula, who's hiding in a coffin on each level. One plays pretty good. This is probably one of the better Sega cards. The 5th one is called My Hero, and I'd compare this to something like Kung Fu. You're just running through the streets, punching all the punks, punching and kicking. It's a beat-em-up game. I've heard it's very difficult. I haven't played too much of this one, to be fair, but I like the soundtrack on it, and I like how it plays. So it might be one I delve into deeper at some point. Number 6 is one I'm really bad at, actually. I don't really get this game very much. This is Spy vs. Spy, where you are two spies going against each other around a mansion, searching for items behind furniture, setting booby traps for the other player, and just trying to escape with all the items in hand. I've never really got this game, but I feel it's probably better with 2 players playing against each other rather than the CPU. But yeah, that's quite a well-known title, Spy vs. Spy. Number 7 is Super Tennis. Not really much to say about this one. It is a tennis game. There's different difficulty levels and speed you can play it. And basically you serve and hit the ball back. You're always at the bottom and the CPU is always at the top. This next one's fun. This is Teddy Boy. You are going around this like looping maze, shooting enemies and collecting the little orbs they drop. And once you've defeated all the enemies, you move on to the next stage. That's actually quite a fun little one. I like this one. Next is Transport, also known as Astro Flash in Japan. This one's a side-scrolling shooter. While it plays and looks pretty good, looks like a kind of Gradius clone. You've got a spaceship and you can find power-ups which turn you into a robot with different weapons. I don't really like the fact that there's only 2 levels and they loop indefinitely. I kind of like having an ending. This goes on forever until you give up. Other than that, it's pretty good. And then finally, and this one was only released as a pack-in title in the UK, we have Hang On. So this came as a card or a cart, with several of the Mega Drive 1 consoles. It was also built into some Mega Drive 1. I think my Mega Drive 1 has got built-in hang-on. But if you want the retail release of this, it's going to be expensive, and you have to get it from Italy or Australia. My copy came from Australia. It wasn't cheap to get hold of, but I wanted the retail set. So I've got all of them in a box. As I say, this did get re-released on cartridge as well. So that's it. That's the full set of PAL Master System card games. 8 were released in the UK. The 2 that weren't were Great Soccer and Hang On. If you want to get hold of those for your collection, it's going to cost a bit more. Great Soccer, I didn't actually pay too much for. It came from Germany. I think I paid about £100 for this, plus import duty. I'm fine with German. It plays in English anyway. And then the Australian one, Hang On, it's going to cost you a couple of £100 at least, because it's very rare. Both of these are listed on CEX, but they very rarely come into stock. And if they do, more than likely it's a mistake on CEX's part, because they sometimes get the card and the cart versions confused, or they have versions that come in which have been home printed, and it's pretty obvious when that happens. But yeah, if you're lucky, you'll get them from them, but they'll be imports. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.